when I quietly stepped forward and slipped the cashier my card to pay for the poor woman's groceries at Walmart. I thought I was just doing a small act of kindness. She looked worn down, her clothes tattered, her eyes heavy with embarrassment as she realized she didn't have enough money. I didn't expect anything in return. But what happened afterward? It turned my entire world upside down. Because that woman wasn't just some stranger in need. She was someone from my past. Someone I thought I'd never see again. And what she revealed to me later shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. Tell me, was I wrong to get involved? Or was this all meant to happen for a reason? It all started on a regular Friday evening. I was exhausted after a long week at work, the kind of week that just drains you mentally and physically. My boss had been writing me about deadlines, my coworkers were gossiping about each other, and I just wanted some peace. So, I stopped by Walmart on my way home to pick up a few things: milk, bread, some frozen dinners, nothing special. The store was crowded as it usually is on payday weekends, and people were buzzing around with carts overflowing with snacks and soda. I remember standing in line behind this older woman, maybe in her late 50s, early 60s. She had this frail look about her, like life had been rough for a while. Her clothes were clean but clearly worn down, faded jeans, an old sweater with a hole at the sleeve. She was carefully unloading her groceries onto the belt, just basic stuff. Bread, canned soup, rice, some frozen vegetables, a small bag of dog food. Nothing fancy, nothing extra. And then she pulled out a small envelope from her purse. I noticed her hands were trembling as she counted the cash, one bill at a time. The cashier rang up the total, $152.37, and that's when her face changed. She froze, then started fumbling through her purse, whispering something to herself. The line behind us was growing impatient. I could hear people sighing, tapping their feet, muttering things like, "Come on," and, "Some people can't plan ahead." The poor woman's cheeks flushed red as she apologized to the cashier. I think I miscounted," she said softly. "Can you take off the dog food and maybe the eggs?" My heart sank. I could feel that familiar tug of empathy. The kind you get when you know someone's just trying their best. I didn't even think twice. I leaned forward and said, "It's okay. I'll cover it." The woman's head shot up. No, please, I can't let you do that," she said quickly, her voice shaky. But I insisted. "It's fine, really. Just let me." I handed my card to the cashier before she could say another word. The cashier swiped it, handed me the receipt, and smiled awkwardly. The woman stared at me like she couldn't believe what had just happened. "You didn't have to do that?" she whispered. "I know," I said, "but I wanted to." She tried to protest again, but I waved it off. "Just promise me you'll pay it forward someday." She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. She reached out her hand to mine, squeezing it gently. "Thank you," she said, her voice cracking. I smiled, told her to take care, and pushed my cart toward the exit, feeling a quiet satisfaction. I didn't think I'd ever see her again. But I was wrong. So incredibly wrong. The next morning, I was sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a knock at the door. It startled me because I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole, and my heart skipped a beat. Standing there, holding a small paper bag, was the same woman from Walmart. I opened the door, confused. How did you find me?" I asked. She smiled faintly and held up the bag. "I asked the store manager who you were," she said softly. "I wanted to thank you properly." I was taken aback. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "I told you, it was nothing." She shook her head. "No, it wasn't nothing. You have no idea what that moment meant to me." She stepped inside when I invited her, and I could tell she'd been crying. She sat at my kitchen table and pulled something from her bag. A small, folded photograph. She slid it across to me, and when I looked at it, my entire body froze. It was an old photo of my father with her. My father, smiling, his arm wrapped around her shoulders, standing in front of a house I didn't recognize. "What is this?" I asked, my throat tightening. She took a deep breath. "Your father was my husband?" she said. My heart pounded in my ears. "That's not possible," I whispered. "My father passed away 5 years ago. He was married to my mother for 30 years. The woman's eyes filled with tears. He was married to your mother, yes. But before her, he was married to me. I felt dizzy. I sat down, trying to process what she'd just said. She explained everything slowly, carefully. They'd been young when they met, just out of high school. He was charming, ambitious, but also reckless. They got married quickly, and things fell apart even quicker. He left her, moved to another state, started a new life. Eventually meeting my mother. She said she never remarried, never had kids. When I saw your name on the receipt at Walmart, she said, I recognized it instantly. Your last name, it's not very common. And when I saw you up close, I knew. You have his eyes. I didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to deny it, to tell her she was mistaken. But deep down, something clicked. My father had always been secretive about his past. Whenever I asked about his younger years, he'd brush it off, saying, that's a story for another time. That other time never came. And now this woman, this stranger from Walmart, was telling me she was once his wife. She reached into her bag again and pulled out some old documents. Marriage certificates, letters, even a few photos. They all checked out. My father's name, his handwriting, it was unmistakable. I felt like the ground beneath me had vanished. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. My voice barely above a whisper. She sighed. Because I've been looking for closure for decades. I didn't expect to find it in a Walmart checkout line. I wasn't going to say anything, but when you helped me, it felt like fate was giving me a chance to finally tell my story. We sat there for hours, talking. She told me things about my father I never knew. How he used to sing when he worked. How he loved fishing but hated deep water. How he once dreamed of owning a small farm. She said he wasn't a bad man, just a broken one. He made mistakes, she said, but he also had a good heart. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, confusion, pity. I just sat there, staring at the woman who, in some twisted way, was part of my family. A few days passed, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went to my mother's house that weekend. She's a strong woman, practical and grounded, but I knew this conversation would shake her. I showed her the photo, the documents. She went pale. Where did you get these? She asked, her voice trembling. I told her everything, from the Walmart encounter to the woman's visit. She sat in silence for a long time before finally speaking. He told me once, she said quietly, that he had made mistakes before we met. He never went into details, and I didn't ask. Maybe I should have. I felt my heart ache for her. My mother had lived her entire marriage believing she knew the man she loved. And now, years after his death, we were discovering pieces of his life we never knew existed. It wasn't just shocking. It was heartbreaking. So that's the situation I was in. I had stumbled into a family secret buried for over 40 years, all because I paid $150 for a stranger's groceries. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and tell me, what would you have done in my place? Would you have let it go? Or would you have tried to find out the truth? Even if it meant uncovering something painful. After a few sleepless nights, I decided I needed to see her again. I called the number she'd written on the back of one of the letters and asked if we could meet. She agreed. We met at a small cafe near the edge of town. She looked calmer this time, almost relieved. She told me she'd been struggling financially for years. Her health wasn't great, and she was living on disability checks. I never wanted money, she said. I just wanted to know if he was happy, if he ever thought about me. Something in me broke at that moment. I reached across the table and said, he would have wanted you to be okay. He made his mistakes, but you deserve peace too. She smiled weakly. You sound like him, she said. I didn't know how to respond. Instead, I asked if she needed help getting back on her feet. She refused at first, but I could tell she was struggling. Eventually, I convinced her to let me cover a few of her bills anonymously. Nothing extravagant, just enough to ease her burden. Weeks passed, and we kept in touch. I introduced her to my mother one day, nervously expecting anger or resentment. But my mother surprised me. She treated the woman with kindness, even grace. We can't change the past, she said. But we can choose how we face it. It was one of those moments that make you realize the strength of forgiveness. Months later, that woman passed away peacefully in her sleep. I attended her funeral. It was small, quiet, attended by just a few neighbors. Before she died, she'd written me a letter. In it, she thanked me for seeing her, for giving her the closure she'd sought her whole life. She said helping her that day in Walmart wasn't just about groceries. It was about reconnecting the lost pieces of a story that had been waiting to be finished. After the funeral, I went home and looked through the old photos again. I found one where she and my father were standing together, young and full of life. I smiled through tears and realized something profound. Sometimes, the universe doesn't send us coincidences. It sends us reminders. Reminders that kindness, no matter how small, can change the course of not just one life but many. So yes, I paid $150 for a stranger at Walmart. But that act of kindness uncovered a hidden chapter of my family's history, healed old wounds, and gave peace to someone who'd been carrying pain for decades. If I could go back, I'd do it all again. Because sometimes, doing the right thing, no matter how small, leads to something far greater than you could ever imagine. Like this video if you believe that every act of kindness has a purpose. Subscribe for more real life stories like this. And tell me in the comments, have you ever done something small that ended up changing everything? I'll see you all in the next story.